We have an update on the Miles Bridges situation. Miles Bridges yesterday was charged with felony domestic violence as well as 2 counts of child abuse. We'll discuss all of that today on Locked On Hornets.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Locked On Hornets, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Unfortunately, this episode will be yet another melancholy in tone because of what we've had to discuss this offseason regarding the Miles Bridges situation. I'm going to go through the timeline real quickly in case you don't have all of the information, in case you need to be reminded of what's taken place over the last 20 days or so. And then once we get through this timeline, we'll share some of our thoughts on what's taken place. So Miles Bridges was arrested for felony domestic violence on June 29th by Los Angeles police and was later released on a $130,000 bond. Michelle Johnson, the mother of his children, posted several pictures on Instagram on July 1st of her apparent injuries, along with a medical report that read, quote, adult victim of physical abuse by male partner, assault by strangulation, brain concussion, closed fracture of nasal bone, contusion of rib, multiple bruises, strain of neck muscle, end quote on the medical report. The Instagram post also included a video of Bridges' son speaking about witnessing the alleged event too. Miles Bridges now faces 1 felony count of injuring a child's parent and 2 felony counts of child abuse under circumstances or conditions likely to cause great bodily injury or death. We'll get to that statement in just a moment as well. Now, the LA District Attorney, George Gascon, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, also had a comment on this. Quote, domestic violence creates physical, mental, and emotional trauma that has a lasting impact on survivors. Children who witness family violence are especially vulnerable, and the impact on them is immeasurable. The Hornets did release a statement on this too, and the Hornets said this, quote, these are very serious charges that we will continue to monitor. As this is a legal matter, we will have no further comment at this time. So very short comment from the Charlotte Hornets, but those are the details as it's played out to this current point. There is a hearing today. Hopefully we'll get some more information on what's next to take place. I would imagine we're going to get at least something from this hearing that will be taking place today based off of the charges. Again, felony domestic violence, 2 counts of child abuse. Doug, where do you want to start just based off of what we've seen here? Child abuse, the 2 counts that the district attorney is seeking here against Miles Bridges seem to be something new that we haven't discussed in a whole lot of detail as of yet.
Yeah, and as we've talked about through this process with Katie Heindel and amongst ourselves, too often in these discussions, the centering of these conversations tends to be around the professional player involved and the implications for the team, when the centering of these discussions really needs to be around the victim, or in this case now, multiple victims of the alleged incident that is being described here. And the new wrinkle, which we had some hints of in the Michelle Johnson post, as you mentioned, that the new wrinkle here is that his children are involved or allegedly involved. And we have to be, obviously there's a legal matter taking place, and we have to be careful as we kind of couch this in language and legal language as all of this is playing out. And I think that's why you saw the Hornets statement being sort of a nothing statement, is because they chose not to act on this early on. They now find themselves wrapped up in the messiness of the American justice system. On the child abuse allegations and the charges on this, I think there is some confusion, and I think certainly through this process we'll have it cleared up. There seems to be some confusion about this, about whether or not because when we hear child abuse, I think we automatically, I'm going to speak for myself, you automatically go to the physical nature of that, of striking a child, and we have a visceral reaction to that. And what I've challenged myself with in learning more about this process is the mental and emotional aspect of even witnessing an event like this, and the impact, as the district attorney was mentioning, it is immeasurable. It's traumatic. It's going to last a lifetime. Witnessing a parent physically abuse, hurt, injure, dominate a partner is something that's absolutely devastating. And California, and I don't know, and we need to learn more about what the statutes are in North Carolina. I think that's important to learn about. But we know, in the California statute, they have decided, all right, to protect children, we're going to make it a felony to be around this situation, to witness this kind of attack. And I think it speaks to the idea that children who witness this kind of thing, it's not only about the mental and emotional harm, which is a huge part of it, but it's also about the fact that if they're around in these situations, because those situations are so volatile, they're filled with all kinds of emotion and rage and anger that can move to the children in an instant, in a snap. And so this statute recognizes that children, even being around this situation, need to be protected. People need to be punished for putting them in this situation that could easily result in physical abuse.
Yeah, the emotional part about this is not talked about nearly enough. Where we see the medical report come in as to how Michelle Johnson physically was affected, it's gruesome. It's absolutely brutal. And then that's where people stop. And when we don't, what we fail usually at times, I don't want to speak for everybody, but a lot of times people fail to realize the emotional trauma that not only this has on the person affected, like Michelle Johnson, but also the kids that were affected, even if they were not physically struck, even if that did not take place. Now, the wording, the language on this statement, where you do have child abuse that could cause bodily harm. I want to get this right. I shouldn't just try to paraphrase here. When you have the child abuse counts come in as well, conditions likely to cause conditions likely to cause great bodily injury or death, that could lead one to believe that there was some kind of physical altercation. But what seems to have happened here is, according to the LA District Attorney comment, where he clarifies that children who witness family violence are especially vulnerable and the impact on them is immeasurable, it does lead you to believe that this has taken place in an emotional standpoint from their point of view, and that is child abuse, which, Doug, I would completely agree with. Like, here we are talking about traumatic events. It's why I talked about this in the standpoint that I did previously when discussing Miles Bridges, and I took the kid's standpoint when that video was released, when Michelle Johnson put that video of their son saying that he did witness what took place, what allegedly took place, right?
And can I pause you there for just a moment, because I think this is important. When we say what he witnessed, I want to again read the medical report. Adult victim of physical abuse by male partner, assault by strangulation, brain concussion, closed fracture of nasal bone, contusion of rib, multiple bruises, strain of neck muscle. The assault by strangulation. That's what we're talking about. That this child has allegedly witnessed. Go ahead.
So when I said then that child is not going to forget about that, then you have to imagine what kind of negative impact that has on that child's life going forward. And so now, to be legally responsible for this, to have a legal count on this, I think does matter. And now you're seeing that somewhat, as we talked about that already, right? But now we are kind of seeing this play out in the justice system, where now we're seeing the DA come after Miles Bridges with a couple of those charges as well.
Yeah, and we as we've discussed with Katie Heindel, I'll keep bringing up that interview. So if I keep bringing it up, so if you actually want to watch it, I thought it was we posted the full interview as well as some edited portions. So go check that out on our YouTube channel. I thought it was a really kind of informative discussion, in-depth discussion of this. The legal system is tenuous. It's not especially known for protecting women. So I think we have to be really careful when we talk about, like, well, if these charges stick, then boy, he's going to be in trouble. And the NBA and the Hornets monitoring this situation. So often we see in these situations that the leagues and the teams attach themselves to the legal system it's safe. Okay, well, the legal system will save us in this instance. If the legal system says that he's done these things for sure, 100%, then we can move. And they don't take into consideration the pictures that we saw from Michelle Johnson, the medical report, the other materials that may not ultimately have an impact on the final results of this in the legal system, because this whole system is messy and not black and white. So the leagues like to be in the black and white. They don't like to be in the gray. We'll see how this plays out. But unfortunately, Walker, I don't have a lot of faith that the leagues and teams will act in such a way, except in complete self-interest. And I hope I'm proven wrong.
Yeah, and we'll see. The last thing I want to say about the emotional trauma real quickly is that Michelle Johnson knows about the long-lasting effects that this could have on her children too. And so not only does she have to deal with all of the injuries that you just repeated, Doug, but now she has to deal with the fact that her children are going to remember this, that immediately affects their child, her children's life. And so now that has to have some kind of emotional trauma on her as well, not just her, but now here we are talking about it from the kid's standpoint. There's so many branches to go out on that I'm glad that this is being acknowledged. I'm glad that it's being acknowledged in a legal form, because so many times when we talk about this, it's black and white, as you mentioned, physical, not emotional. That's what people are getting charged with, and that doesn't come into account. And so now the fact that this is coming to account, it does seem like something unique. Unique means one. It does seem rare, So I am glad that this is actually at least this is baked into the cake here, that this is actually being acknowledged as a real problem that needs to be addressed, or at least is in the infant stages of being addressed. A situation that the NBA and this franchise is not entirely unfamiliar with. They've dealt with this previously with Jeff Taylor, who was suspended 25 games, but ultimately remained with the team after pleading guilty to his charges. So that's the historical context, at least within this franchise, that we're dealing with. And that leads me to kind of my final question for you, Walker, on this is what do you think about the Hornets statement? Well, Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we can do that in the second segment. We can talk. Okay, let's do it in the second segment, because we are going to discuss how leagues operate here. It's exactly what Doug was talking about, kind of leading into the end there. So the Hornets did release that statement, very short. Did not want to get into detail based off of anything that took place. So that's what we'll get to in the second segment today on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm Walker Mail, been covering Charlotte sports for a while. That's Doug Branson, the founder of the podcast, talking Charlotte Hornets, and specifically Miles Bridges as it concerns the felony domestic violence charge that was actually put on him yesterday, as well as 2 counts of child abuse. Now, I do want to get to the Hornets statement on this. So again, I'll repeat it. Quote, "These are very serious charges that we will continue to monitor. As this is a legal matter, we will have no further comment at this time." It's very short, Doug. And you know what? It's extremely short, just like the first one was. This is their second statement that they've released on the matter. Really no use in going back to the first statement they released, because that might have been it. Like that this is serious, we'll have no further comment. Both of the statements ended with, "We'll have no further comment at this time." My thoughts on the statement are that I think it's okay right now. Because what happens is, if you explore more language, if you explore more words, more sentences to write, a lot of times these teams are going to get it horribly wrong. And if you aren't going to say, we're releasing Miles Bridges because of these heinous acts, then there's not much more to say than we have no further comment on this time. We understand the severity of these alleged accounts. I mean, Doug, I honestly, we'll kill teams, rightfully so, for saying the wrong things during sensitive matters. And if the Hornets essentially acknowledge what's taking place, acknowledge the severity, and then they say we have no further comment at this time. Like, okay, right now, there's a very soon point where that doesn't become okay anymore. Okay? I just don't think we've reached that yet. What say you?
That we also kill teams for saying nothing. And so because we kill teams for saying nothing, they feel as if when these updates happen, they must say something. Mm-hmm. The important words in this statement are, as this is a legal matter. I think a lot of people would argue that it's not just a legal matter, that as factually it is a legal matter. That Miles Bridges right now is a part of the legal system in Los Angeles County and California, and this is a legal matter. But this is also from the Hornets' perspective, this is also a public relations matter. This is also a domestic violence matter. This is an emotional matter, as well as a just stone cold legal matter. But as I said, teams and leagues love to operate in the black and white. They love to hide behind blind lady justice. But we know, I think anyone that thinks about this for more than a second before moving on through their day can understand that sometimes the legal system is not entirely blind, that it can side with certain types of people over other types of people. And I don't know that a team or a league is entirely equipped to deal with that, but we don't want them to say nothing. And so they must say something. And that is what we got. We got something, but it's really kind of nothing.
Do you have a problem with their statement, the way it came out?
Well, the only thing I have a problem with is I feel that they have inserted them. This is a position that they've put themselves in, because and partly that Miles Bridges has put them in, but just by virtue of having committed this act, but that this is a situation of their own making. And as they continue through this process, the longer they stay in this, the worse it gets, the worse it looks, because this situation, in my opinion, is not going to get any better. I just believe in my soul this is not a situation that we're suddenly magically going to one day go, wow, we were totally wrong about that.
Right.
I just don't. I've seen enough. Yeah.
No, and I have too, to be honest with you, of course. And this is what we've talked about. We've talked about this really the past, ever since Michelle Johnson's post. That was 20 days ago, right? That was July 1st that took place. So we've had this for 20 days. And the Charlotte Hornets have not pulled the qualifying offer. There has not been any other contract talks, as far as our knowledge goes, for any other team, because Miles Bridges is a restricted free agent right now. There haven't been any further contract talks as far as we know because of what has taken place. Now, my next question to you as we continue, kind of talking about this is, as far as the qualifying offer goes, you're ready to pull it, right? I am too, to be honest, but I'm just trying to clarify, you're ready to pull it as well.
Yes, and it's not as if it's not. I just want to clarify for people listening for the first time. I've wanted to do that since I saw the pictures, and that's me. Again, my standard for this is not, because people often come into the comments and they say, "Well, we have a innocent until proven guilty. We have a justice system." That's the justice system, okay? That's over there. That's that thing. I have my opinion on this, and that's where I've landed, as I think they should have pulled the qualifying offer, and the fact that they haven't is, again, I think, this situation is not going to get any better, and it's not going to look any better that they haven't pulled the qualifying offer.
No, and here's kind of what I want to talk about too, because I totally agree with you. I think it is time. I think it is time to go ahead and pull the qualifying offer now. If they're waiting for this hearing to take place and then they feel like they have enough information, then they do it.
Guilty plea, they may be waiting for something like that.
True. So, okay. The bottom line is it very much looks like Miles Bridges is going to miss some amount of time. I don't know how much. I don't know what's going to take place. But so many times that we see domestic violence occur from an athlete playing, whether it be the NFL, whether it be the MLB or the NBA, and pick a league, right? It doesn't matter. When we see domestic violence take place, we'll see that team, in some cases, drop that player. I go back to the Kareem Hunt example, and I've talked about this before, right? Where the Kansas City Chiefs, after that video was released of Kareem Hunt kicking a woman, they release him. Done. some time passes. He does a video saying that's not me. Okay. Cleveland picks him up. And Kareem Hunt, very talented football player, has a nice little second stint with Cleveland, and they're very good and they're trying to win, and all they care about is winning, right? With that point has been exhausted quite a bit. But what happens is, for instance, if Charlotte pulls the qualifying offer and then another team picks up Miles Bridges, they're going to take the PR hit, and there's going to be a lot of backlash for them doing it. And they're going to weather the storm, quote unquote, and then just bank on us not talking about this a year from now. And maybe Miles Bridges is, who cares how he's playing in our eyes, but they care. And if he's playing well, then all of a sudden they've saved $1 in order to win games. In the meantime, the Charlotte Hornets dropped him because they weren't going to stand for these alleged instances that took place. And then eventually they felt, nope, we're not doing it anymore. And then let's say the Charlotte Hornets aren't doing very well. And then, you're going to get criticized, right? They're going to get killed. And all of a sudden you have a different, not PR nightmare, but they have to deal with all of the jokes, being the memes, being one of the worst franchises in the NBA.
Well, that's not an unfamiliar place for this franchise to be.
No, absolutely. Absolutely it's not. But my point being is, if you were to think about, how these teams operate, where all they care about is winning. All they care about is trying to make as much money as possible. Winning helps that, trying to put together that good old championship team. They're going to view it, a lot of teams might view it as, well, why am I just not going to take the PR hit that comes first, while this other team, they're able to weather the storm, and then they reap the benefits of picking up that talented player later. And that's the problem, right? It's because those franchises aren't held accountable. Cleveland isn't held accountable. I mean, damn, Kansas City's I almost cursed. They're the worst. I almost said the bad one too, right? But they're the worst, man.
Yeah, you said the okay one.
Yeah, I did. But Kansas City's the worst because they've had so many, right? They're all bad. But as far as just multiple instances of having people that have had, a lot of evidence against them, in cases of domestic violence, doesn't matter. And they win a Super Bowl, and, Kansas City, they're fun, and we love watching them play. I want to talk about the society view of that for a moment, because that's what these teams are trying to think of too. We're going to use this as leverage, man. Now we don't have to pay you as much money. Why would we drop you when another team is going to pick you up, reap the benefits of it? We're going to suck, and then everybody's going to make us the butt of the joke some more. And that falls on us. That falls on a lot of people on how we view sports.
It's gross. It's disheartening. It's tough to avoid. It feels like eventually this conversation, this situation is coming for every single team. And so we have to deal with this. And I think, to me, the answer to this is that this isn't going to happen overnight, but as a country, we get more serious about domestic violence and seriously punishing those who commit this crime, and understanding that it's a crime that has long-lasting effects. It's not about the physical damage. It is about the physical damage. It's not only, be careful with my words here, it's not only about the physical damage that someone inflicts upon another person, but the damage that does mentally and emotionally. I think we're just starting to really come to terms with that, and the legal system is catching up with that. And so these people need to be punished such that it makes it untenable for them to continue collecting that much money and collecting that much power. Should people who get help for this and do the time, get punished and then come out of that, should they be banished completely out of society? I think that's an interesting question to explore, but certainly they should not be allowed to collect the money and the power that is associated with being a professional athlete. That just doesn't seem sensical to me.
Yeah, that falls on your own personal opinion of how much you believe in rehabilitation after somebody commits such a heinous act. And I do. Like I think it only serves society better for that person to go through some form of rehabilitation. It does not mean that that player or that person should be able to continue, representing the Charlotte Hornets or representing any team, right? Do you want that person representing what your franchise stands for? And that's what we discuss here, too. You continue to talk about the difference between the legal system and how these leagues can operate. It's exactly why Deshaun Watson is going to be suspended, whether he appeals it or not, fine. But the NFL has the power to suspend Deshaun Watson because Deshaun violated their conduct policy. And they have the power to do that, just like they have the power to ban him if they want to. Now, he might fight that tooth and nail, saying, well, the legal system didn't find me guilty. Why? What grounds do you have to suspend me? You know what? Because we can. And then those same people, by the way, who want Deshaun Watson or want other people to continue to play in the league and say, well, look, the NFL can do what they want. They had that same argument when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling, that these team owners can do what they want. And now now he's fine. The legal system, you know what I'm saying? Like it goes both ways for a lot of these people. Anyways, yeah, that's the difference. The NFL, the NBA, they can operate how they want to within certain parameters.
This is all continuing to grow and evolve, and just the fact that we continue to have this conversation is a sign of, I think, a signal of that growth. It doesn't always happen like this, but I hope we continue to have these conversations because I try to come at this with a little bit of humility, like, hey, I'm learning more about these kind of situations. I don't always get it right. I don't always say the right thing. My thinking on this continues to evolve and change, hopefully for the better. Because I think about, I don't know if I was doing a podcast around the time that the Jeff Taylor incident occurred, but I'm sure I didn't talk about it like this. I know we were doing a podcast when Lance Stevenson signed, and Lance Stevenson was arrested and allegedly pushed his girlfriend down a flight of stairs. And I know we didn't talk about it during that signing. Yeah. So we are not blameless. And we have been partly responsible for how this stuff is talked about, but I'll use the okay curse like you did. I'm damn sure that we're going to not continue to be part of that process anymore.
All right, let's do the awkward transition so I don't actually curse and
we can just transition to the next segment if you just want to cleanly move
let's try to avoid the curse words if both of us are letting that fly about, and let's just go to something different. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. I didn't know if we were going with the graphic there or not.
You know what? It didn't feel right. So tell us what's coming up.
I thought it was borderline. I thought it was like, so I called for it, but you're right. You're right, Doug. We should not go with the graphic. Instead, let's talk about BetOnline after we talk a little bit more about the Steve Clifford and LaMelo Ball relationship, as well as Steve Clifford's appearance on the Adrian Wojnarowski podcast. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's talk about that Steve Clifford appearance on the Woj Pod next. Locked On Hornets. All right, Doug. Let's talk about this Steve Clifford appearance. We discussed a little bit with Nada yesterday about the LaMelo Ball relationship, how Steve Clifford plans to address that, how he plans to build it, watching game film, trying to bounce some ideas off of one another and just see how LaMelo's receptive to it. And, that it seemed to be very basketball related, right? Whereas maybe some people view relationships as what you do off of the court. How often do you go out to eat? How often do you hang out and play video games or just invite people over to your house for a cookout? Whatever. It's not what Steve Clifford's about.
A couple of beers with some buds.
Yep. That's not him. He just wants to have a good relationship inside the Spectrum Center, inside any basketball arena that they might be, and that can work, right? That's how well he thinks it can work. What were some of your other takeaways? I know, being the person you are, you probably diligently took notes on what you wanted to talk about, and even wrote some extremely detailed notes about those bullet points, and then have a whole page before you even get to the next bullet point. I just want to hear your main ideas, Doug, and then we can bounce around some of the details.
Well, I'm a big note taker because if I don't write it down, I won't say it on the show. And I mean, you don't even know all of the brilliance that I've left on the floor because I didn't write it down. And so I'm trying to, by the way, with my Substack, Every Hornets Boxscore. I don't know if you heard about this. I've got a new Substack that you can subscribe free. And there's going to be some paid content too, starting in the regular season, but I'm doing game notes and on everyhornetsboxscore.com, and a podcast that Walker's a part of that David Walker's going to be on the next episode of. So that's super exciting. Again, everyhornetsboxscore.com. All right, I'm done with the plug. Let's move to this Clifford on.
What did you write down, Doug?
Okay. So on the LaMelo Ball thing, I want to reiterate that because people don't watch every episode. So on LaMelo Ball, Clifford said that, he knows that the best players want to be coached, but that LaMelo Ball has a similar love of the game as Kemba, that he has joy on the floor, and that he is not going to guess when it comes to LaMelo Ball's game. He's going to study it, and when he approaches LaMelo Ball to have serious basketball talk, he is going to know LaMelo's game inside and out, because that's what lends credibility to guys like Clifford. And you need the credit before you can hold someone accountable. You need for that player to think you are credible. Steve Clifford can't do that with his playing background. He was a fringe D3 player. He can't come at him and say, well, I play professionally for this long, so I know what I'm talking about. He can't do that. Even coaches that have that resume find it difficult to communicate with young players, saying, they think, well, yeah, that's what you say, old head. That's what you thought. We shoot 3-pointers now. So he comes at it. You mean
Tyrone Corbin doesn't have anything to offer to LaMelo Ball?
Well, I don't know. Maybe. No, I mean, because there are two types of players, former players that get really lost in how they did it in their day, and players that can move forward and evolve. And I see Steve Clifford as somebody that can absolutely evolve his thinking on how the game is played. He's a study of the game as it's currently being played. If you didn't know, he was on the Brooklyn Nets staff as like a consultant. So he would work with Kevin Durant. He would come in and say, all right, I think, I've been watching your games and this is what I think. And so, he has been around the modern game, even though he's been out of coaching for a couple of years. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it was really interesting about how he's going to develop this relationship with LaMelo Ball. And I think the most important thing to understand is that I think he has the right approach. Come in with actual knowledge, and don't come in with like, well, this is how I think the game should be played nowadays, and play it like this.
Yeah, no, he has shown, he said all the right things as to how he plans to adapt. I think a lot of coaches kind of hit it out of the park is what they say. It's the introductory press conferences that the coaches usually win that. And more often than not, fans are going to be feeling very good about what they hear from their head coach. And then, they're immediately public enemy number one after, a losing season, right? But right now, I think Steve Clifford is saying the right things. I do want to say before we move on, that Steve keeps honing in on how the best players want to be coached. He's priming Melo. KD, hey, if you don't find me credible, I know you find KD credible. KD didn't leave the gym. KD only benefited his teammates. He served as an example for them, how much he worked, how much he put the time in. And he also wanted to be coached because he wanted to be better. I'm just telling you what KD's thinking, Melo. So Clifford's played that a lot.
Well, it's a savvy move. I don't think he's speaking to LaMelo there. I think he's speaking to everyone. If all of this goes south, he wants to say, well, I told you, best players want to be coached. I tried to coach, and So he's setting all that. But I think he honestly believes that, and I think that's borne out in history. Okay, so you've been very interested this whole time in the process that led to the hiring of Steve Clifford. Obviously, Kenny Atkinson was going to be the coach and then decided, hey, I don't want to be the coach anymore. I want to go back to Golden State. And so you've been interested in the process of then going to Steve Clifford. He said on the Woj pod that he didn't think he could even be a factor in the search.
Yeah, right.
And this is after Kenny Atkinson, not in the initial search, but after Kenny Atkinson. He didn't think he could be a factor until Mitch called him. So any of this business, it was ridiculous when he said it. It's even more ridiculous now, but any of this business about Steve Clifford being on their minds initially is just patently, I think, even more ridiculous.
Not enough for them to reach out to the person of interest, which is what you would do if they were a real person. Like he would have maybe come up in the first 7 names that they interviewed. You know, like, look, Steve Clifford being your plan F, fine. Okay. Like, okay, Steve Clifford is, you know, I loved him when he was here, and this might be the right coach for this team.
I think F is the exact right letter because it represents the word that they all said when Kenny Atkinson called them. I don't know if he ever called them, but when or if he did call them and say he wasn't going to be the coach anymore, that's the word that they used.
Did they have to include 2 letters like Plan BS? Maybe, you know, they had they had cycled through the alphabet and then again, and then they said, all right, now it's Plan BS. But yeah, it could not have crossed their mind initially when they fired James Borrego.
I got some key words for you. Ready for some key words that you and anyone listening or watching this show is going to hear a lot, Walker?
I am ready. Let's hear it.
Key word right now, balance. He wants this team, and he said this too in his interview.
It's a good old head coaching word. Absolutely.
It's good. It's so good. Balance. He said this again in his sideline interview with Ashley Shahamady at Summer League. By the way, shouts to Ashley, who is on the broadcast, on the Charlotte Hornets broadcast, doing the Summer League. I thought she did a great job doing the sideline reporting, and actually kept the Summer League team that did that final game got completely off track on this weird conversation about candy. And Ashley Shahamady piped in and was like, hey, there's a game on, which is one of my big gripes. Let's talk about the game. There's a game on, folks. I hate being at like a party, Super Bowl party or something, and there's just all of this chatter about all this different. I'm like, there is a game on. Can we focus on the thing that we came to watch?
But hold on, Doug. Hold on. You understand. You know where I'm going. You understand the hypocrisy.
What?
The blatant hypocrisy that is this podcast trying to put out a message of talk about the game, baby. Like that, it is the most hypocritical this podcast has ever been in its entire existence. I just want you to realize that.
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, keyword balance. Really, like Steve Clifford doesn't, it's clear, Steve Clifford doesn't want to be viewed as like a defense first coach. I think he doesn't want to be viewed as one of his protege, or not protege. What's the opposite of a protege? He's a mentor. Protege of Tom Thibodeau. Yeah, he doesn't want to be viewed in the same way that his mentor, Tom Thibodeau, is viewed, which is like Tom Thibodeau is like nails defense, playing guys 49
He talks like that too. I mean, it's probably a little raspier, but yeah, it talks like that. It's very similar.
I do good impressions. Yeah, I mean, my Mitch impression, people talk to me all the time about it. They're like, wow, it's spot on. And
they stop you in the street.
They do. They say your Mitch impression is. We really like it. It's.
It's. I picture Mitch petting the cat. You know, maybe we go with Steve Clifford.
All right. So you're talking about getting off track. You're getting me off track. So what I'm saying is he doesn't want to be viewed that way. He wants to be viewed as somebody that is speaking about balance, offense and defense. Get the defense middle of the road. It doesn't have to be the best defense in the league. What do you think about that? You like that keyword, balance?
Yeah, balance is great. Usually you hear it more from an NFL coach trying to run the ball 50% of the time, pass the ball 50% of the time, even though that's not what balance really means for NFL offenses. But here's Steve Clifford trying to bring it to the basketball world. So, yep, I'm all about it, baby. Balance. I want the
accountability. There's another. You're going to hear accountability, and that was a big thing around his hire.
Did we get culture? We did get culture in this podcast. We did. So Steve Clifford was discussing the difference between players now, and he said, look, I don't care how the NBA has progressed. It is important to build a good culture. Like the culture has to be right. Yeah, he did. We got it, man.
We got them all. Culture, bingo. Accountability, balance. Those are your key words. Here's an interesting thing from the podcast in general. Is that I heard him multiple times mention the coaching staff and how that's changed about the game, even more so than some of the other things about the game that's changed from a coaching perspective, that the staffs are younger, that they're bigger, that you have more people on your staff, and that as a coach, having relationships with people and getting the trust of your coaching staff, but also trusting the people that are on your staff to communicate what you would like to communicate to the entire team is super important. And he mentions he mentioned staff and trust and the amount of people on the staff like multiple times during these podcasts. It's got me thinking about the conversations that were swirling around this coaching hire, which was that the impediment, reportedly, some of the impediments to hiring both Mike D'Antoni and Kenny Atkinson was a reluctance from the Hornets to move on from certain members of the staff. So I just want us to file away, Walker. I just want us to file away these comments by Steve Clifford, his focus on the coaching staff, because it's such a weird thing to focus on in an interview with Adrian Wojnarowski.
Yeah, just the amount of people in an organization now. And it's funny because here we are discussing player development, which he discussed as kind of a buzzword. You know, like it's a newer word, kind of. He's like, yo, look, we've been about player development in my entire career. Like this profession has been about player development, but we care about it from the 27-year-old standpoint too, not just the 20-year-old that you have within the organization. Like every day is player development for coaches. And when he was discussing that, he talked about also, I think, just how many people you have, right? So, you know, you have a liaison and, you know, from the Greensboro, from the G League to the NBA, right? Nick Friedman was somebody that has since been hired that was viewed very fondly. You know, then Jordan Surenkamp, you know, also coaching the G League team, you know, also being able to coach the Summer League team in this past session, and how important those guys are building relationships with some of these young players. And so you almost, I mean, it's funny, like you are teetering to having a coach per player. You know, like, all right, this is your guy. This is your guy.
Not to mention the people that are around the player that are not hired by the team, which you can't really do a ton about. But you've got trainers and different things that are specially hired by these players. But as a coach, what I gathered from what Clifford said is what you're trying to control is the messaging that's going out from the people that are hired on your staff, making sure that Nick Friedman is telling Kai Jones the same thing that you're preaching to LaMelo Ball, and that everyone's on the same page, and how difficult that is. I would think, Walker, that that's even more difficult when you don't get to bring in, you know, your entire staff, when you don't get to build it from the ground up, which I think is at least partially happening with this situation. So I just want to file this away. I'm not saying it's really incredibly meaningful, but I just want to file it away for future reference when or if there's a situation with the coaching staff.
It is filed. We will talk about that if it rears its head once again. Are we?
That's what I say when I file things. I go, file it.
It doesn't matter if anybody's in the room or not. You just say that out loud because you need to hear it.
And then I say, there's a game on. Let's focus on the game, people. I would like to get serious about the game. I'm a very serious person, especially when I file it.
All right, let's talk more about the pod, maybe in another episode, or who knows if we got through his whole list of notes. If there are any more notes, we'll get to that.
He had lunch with Terry Rozier. He had lunch with Terry. Didn't say what he had. I don't know I don't know where they went. I don't know what he had. You know, he's obviously not a grilling guy. He's not gonna invite people over for a barbecue, but when he goes out to eat, I'm not sure what he's eating these days. I think he's staying healthier. You know, he had some health issues his first round with Charlotte Hornets, so I'm sure he's eating healthy, but don't know if he had the salad, the soup, the sandwich. We don't know, but he had lunch with Terry Rozier. They talked basketball.
Well, he did say he got some rest. Maybe we talk about that. All right, other pod, different. Stop. Yeah. All right. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Appreciate you joining us and making us your first listen. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. It's your daily 30-minute update on the association. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.